Alright guys, so we're doing another video, and today we're going to fix our axle. It's the first time doing it, so let's see how it goes. So, long story short, we ended up nicking our CV boot on the wheel side, on the outer side, and we need my car this weekend, so decided to kind of do what I could to expedite this replacement. So instead of just replacing the boot, which would have taken about 3 weeks is what I estimated, I decided to just get a whole new axle through O'Reilly's, yeah, so should be a good replacement overall. I would rather have gotten OEM, but that was, I think, 2 months out, so yeah. I mean, might still fix the OEM boot and just have that as a backup, because you never know. Yeah, so this is my first time doing this, so I've never done a job like this before. I have to give a huge shout out to Ben for helping me out. You guys might know him as Hyperhawk Camaro. He actually did a video on it and gave some good detail on it, but I wanted to dedicate this video not just to him, but to a little more on the process of doing just that. So that way, if something happens or you guys want to change your axle for whatever reason, you guys have a video to be able to reference. So I'm gonna do my best to do step by step like I normally do, but you know, it's just me doing this, so it's gonna be a little bit tough. So yeah, so I'm doing it in my garage. It's about almost 8 o'clock at night, and I'm gonna do my best to try and get it done before midnight. So let's see what we can do. So what we're first gonna want to do is we're gonna want to just obviously just loosen up the wheel on the ground. And one thing too is we're gonna want to take the center cap off, and we're gonna want to loosen the axle bolt that's back there. Now the axle bolt is going to be kind of pinched in, so this usually gets pinched in right here. So you're gonna want to make sure that is pinched out, so when you loosen it, you know, this comes free. But when you put it back in, you're gonna want to knock it up here to pinch this down, so this does not come loose. It's very important that you pinch this in, so this does not come loose. I cannot reiterate that. This comes loose, your whole hub or axle could fall off, and that's very dangerous. So do not do that. Make sure you get this pinched in. But we have all the tools here. This is the new axle. We have the boot in here in case we have to do that, but I'm hoping that we don't need to do that. So hopefully O'Reilly's did their job and they have the right CV or the right axle in here, so we do not have to worry about that later. Don't look at this photo because that's not what it looks like, but I'll show you guys what it looks like later. All right, so I took the wheel off. I got the car on stands and everything. Sorry, the lighting might be a little too strong, but better to have better light than not. So wheels off. What I couldn't do is I couldn't loosen this up with the wheel on because my aftermarket wheels are too small to get the socket on here. But I do have the e-brake on. I will eventually have to take it off, so that way I can spin this freely to be able to get some of the bolts that are back there, and I'll show you guys what that looks like. But to kind of give you guys an idea of all the grease that just got launched out of there, yeah, it's all over the place. It's pretty bad. So I'm gonna clean that up and get that all nice and I mean, I'm not gonna get all of it because it's gonna be super hard to get it all off, but that being said, though, you know, for the most part, get it all nice and clean. But we're gonna take this off, and it is a 36 millimeter on here. It is a little loose, but it'll come off. I tried a 35 and it wouldn't fit. So yeah, so we're gonna get this loosened up. You're gonna need a big breaker bar or a very strong impact, and thankfully some of the guys from the shop were able to let me borrow some of their tools. So huge shout out to Randy and to Mike for letting me borrow some of their tools. Super appreciate it. So we're gonna get this loosened up. Once we get that loosened up, then we can actually go to the back there and loosen up those bolts, and those are special bolts as well. So yeah, we'll get to that in a moment, but we'll loosen this up first. All right, so we were able to get the axle nut off with an impact very quickly and very nicely, which is very convenient. So I would definitely ask a friend if you got one. So now we got to take these bolts off here. So there's 6 of them, and these are inverted torque bolts. So I can't remember what Ben said, but these are a specific one. So it is an E12. So definitely want to grab one of these. The other thing though is that on the new ones, that will replace those, because those are torque to yield, and what that means is when you torque them to the specific foot-pounds, they stretch. So when you loosen them and you try and retorque them to that same amount, you can't reuse them. That being said though, if you were to reuse them, you probably need to go higher on the torque, which could possibly damage either the bolts or the holes, or you know, they could fail, which you wouldn't want, which would cause more issues. You could use Loctite, but if it were a stationary bolt like one of these, or something that's not really gonna move, I wouldn't say that'd be a big deal. But these are rotating at thousands of rotations a minute. Especially if you're racing or anything like that, I wouldn't gamble it. Just use new bolts. It's a better idea. I will do my best to get part numbers for, you know, what needs to be replaced, but do not reuse these. I would highly suggest just getting brand new ones, so that way you don't run into issues or the possibility of these backing out. So we're going to remove these, and Ben showed us a really cool technique to be able to get these out, so we're going to give it a shot. All right, so we got all those bolts out. I don't know if you can see it way back there. They're all out. So this is a bit of a pain. So there is green thread locker, which is pretty tough. So what I would recommend is you definitely need a swivel. Unless you can lift this up with another jack, then that might be able to have it go from an angle kind of straight, and you might be able to get dead on. I mean, I could have used my other jack, but I wasn't really thinking too much until it was already too late. But what I did is I have the e-brake off, and what I did is when I needed to get to the other bolts, I would just spin the other wheel, and then it would just move it where I need it to. You do need to chock the other wheel when you're taking it off, because it does, when you start applying pressure to loosen it, it'll start to spin the wheel. And if you put the e-brake on, it's not really going to do you any good, because you're not going to be able to spin it, so you're going to have to take it off. So just keep that in mind. But that's off, so now all I got to do is just put a one of these punch into this small hole here, and then we'll just knock it up, so that way it loosens up the splines. Now I would 100% recommend getting one of these. It comes with chisels, it comes with punches, and definitely worth getting, just because you never know. And I bought the whole kit. I don't remember how much it was, but it's coming in handy, and it's coming in handy in other things as well too. So yeah, we're gonna do that. We're gonna punch that in, and then that should loosen it up a little bit, and then we'll do the technique where you actually pull the axle towards the wheel and it should be able to give us some leeway to kind of wrap around it and be able to do what we need to do. So yeah, that's what we're gonna get started on, and yeah, we'll just we'll do that. What I learned is that I believe in Ben's video, I believe his is an automatic, so his ends on his axle are actually smaller versus where the manuals are a lot bigger. Now this one I had to loosen up this top control arm as well as this one here for this to give me enough play, because I wasn't getting enough angle to be able to pop it out and be able to pull it. So now that I have a little bit of extra room, it should be able to pop out, because I just needed a little more room and I wasn't getting enough because these were holding it. So now that I've loosened that up, I should be able to pull it out. What I did do though is I did tighten this up to see if that would work. Don't do that. It's not going to work. You need more play here, not in the actual axle. So I'm going to remove this, and then I should be able to pop it out, and it should come out with no problem. Let's hope. Here is the busted one, and that cut right there is what caused the biggest issue. So here's the new one, and as always, it's always a good idea to double check and make sure that your parts fit. So I'm going to take this out and we'll compare them. All right, so there is a dust boot cover on this one from what it looks like. Although I'm not sure, but it looks like a dust boot cover, just because it seems like that's really weird. Or it could be just a piece, or this is one solid piece here, and then this goes in first, and then this couples in. It's the only thing I can think of, but I don't think so. I think it's a cover, so we'll find out. But for the most part, as you can see, as far as it looking about the same, it looks pretty close. The only reason why I feel like it doesn't line up 100% is I feel like these joints are a little bit bigger versus this itself is a little bit bigger itself. So overall, that does kind of worry me a little bit, only because this seems a little more sturdier out of the whole thing versus this. But we're gonna put it in, we're gonna find out, and if it all works well, then I don't think there should be an issue. That being said too though, like the weight difference between the two, they're about the same, so I would say nothing really too much to worry about. So I'm gonna go ahead and clip this, and yeah, we're gonna go ahead and install the new one. I mean, the new one looks pretty thick, looks pretty good, and looks like it's gonna hold up with no problem. Okay, so I figured out what was going on here. So this actually comes apart because you have to fill it up with grease. So they give you a packet of grease that you need to put in here. For the most part, you put all of it in there. And what I did is, I don't want to open this back up. Actually, I guess I can show you guys. Let me. So, oh, is it not gonna let me? It might. Here we go. Gotta be very careful. So as you can see, there's a gasket on there. It usually sits on this side, but you pack it with as much as you can and get it enough to where it's not going to come out on the outsides. But yeah, so you're going to want to pack it with grease that they provide you. Again, this is the one from O'Reilly, so you got to do it from the with the O'Reilly's one. OEM should come sealed, already pre-packed, so you don't have to do this. So yeah, but those who do it from O'Reilly's, just keep in mind you'll have to do that. A good rule of thumb when always doing things, measuring the old one to the new one, but also your bolts. It's always a good idea just to make sure that they line up pretty well, and for the most part they do. They look really good. They don't look like the shorter ones that Ben was mentioning in his video, although This doesn't have more thread in it, so that's a little weird. But again, if we have to use these again, then I'm gonna put more thread locker. I'm gonna clean these up, but I'm gonna try these first and see if these work. I don't see why they wouldn't, but you know, always got to try it first and make sure that this goes all the way seated. So that's the important thing. This has to seat all the way down. If it stops here, no good. We're gonna have to clean these up and then use these again. And we'll just torque them down, put some more thread locker throughout the entire bolt, and just make sure that it seats well. All right, guys, so the car is done. Now, only reason why I didn't do a whole lot as far as filming, Ben already kind of took care of that. But just to kind of show you what I did, and I'll use my old one, is, so as I mentioned, I took everything out. Getting it back in is such a pain, which is mainly why I didn't really show how to do it, because I couldn't film and try and, you know, put the bolts in. But always do it by hand. Just get one in. Once you get one in, for the most part, all the other ones will line up fairly easily. But what I noticed that I had to do, and I should have left the wheel off, but it's pretty late. I had to take off the upper control arm over there, and that lower one right, let me see if I can get it better. The lower one right there, with the cable on it, I had to loosen those up so I could get enough room, and so I could actually like get, you know, the actual axle out. That was kind of tough. But putting it back in was, for the most part, fairly simple. Just had to follow the splines. You're definitely gonna want somebody to help you. You can do it by yourself. It's just insanely tedious because you have to put a bolt in, tighten it, not tighten it down all the way, and then try and put the next one. I had to use zip ties to kind of keep that cap on, because if I didn't, it would have shifted, and then the gasket that's inside, if it gets pinched or it doesn't seat right, all that grease is just gonna come flying out. So you kind of have to like put one in, tighten it down a little bit, and then turn the wheel outside. You can't really do it from the hub because it's really hard to do. The wheel's really good to be able to move it, and then put the next ones, and don't forget those clips, those little small clips. Let me see if I can. Don't forget these little clips. You need these. These are like spring-loaded clips. So when you tighten it down, they kind of sit against that hub, and they create tension against here. So it's like a nice, essentially like a bolt lock. Don't forget those. And if you need a swivel, I would say that 3/8 swivel. Mine broke, so I had to go to a 1/2 inch, and going through all that was a pain. My I do have a 3/8 torque wrench, but my swivel broke, so it wasn't gonna work, and I almost stripped a bolt. Luckily, I was able to just kind of get it. It kind of slipped, but it didn't mess up the bolt entirely. So my word of advice, have somebody help you. 3/8 swivel, and those bolts need to be tightened up at 45 pounds, and then the main axle nut that's on the outside on the wheel hub, that one's 185. You have to use new stuff. Thankfully, I didn't have to use the old ones. The other ones worked and they fit perfectly. So yeah, so now it's really just driving the car, being very easy on it, making sure it's all good. I am going out of town this weekend, so before I leave, maybe on Friday, Saturday morning, I'll probably jack the car up one more time, get under there, and then just see one more time just to make sure that everything is not backing out, nothing's going on wrong or anything, and then maybe just checking the torque one more time just to make sure it's all good. But for the most part, the car is done. Like I said, I tried to get as much footage, but it's really hard to do it by myself, and to be able to set it somewhere so you guys can see what I'm doing. But for the most part, you can do this by yourself. You don't need to do a whole lot. I would recommend not needing to do the grease one. If you can get an OEM, I didn't do that because I needed to get the car done right away. I would recommend that so you don't have to worry about that hub moving, and it's just fairly easy just to kind of get it and not have to worry about zip tying and stuff like that. So, but yeah, time to clean up this gigantic mess over here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe. I hope this was able to help you. I hope you don't have to go through this, but if you do, hopefully this helps. Hit me up and let me know if you need any assistance or anything like that. I'll do my best to help you out. Check out Ben's video. That's where I really kind of got most of this information. I reached out to him as well. Check some other videos out on YouTube as well, and that really helped. So, yeah, you will need specific things. I'm going to do my best to kind of list them in the description below. To do this, so you'll need a big torque wrench to make sure you can get it at 185 pounds. Your standard one usually goes up to about maybe 160, maybe, but you'll need good leverage to be able to get to that much too. So but yeah, thank you guys again. I'm gonna get this finished up. It's kind of late, but like, subscribe like I had mentioned, and yeah, I'll probably just do a follow-up on my shorts to see how things go, and just to see if everything's running smoothly.